We're starting off with updates coming in from the US and Iran because more than 3,000 United States military personnel have arrived in the Red Sea aboard two warships. One-time allies, the United States and Iran have seen tensions escalate repeatedly in the 4 decades since the Islamic Revolution. As Iran advances its nuclear program and trains proxy forces throughout West Asia, the potential for violent conflict persists. Now here's a look at the recent developments which are coming in from the Red Sea region. The move signals a beefed up response from Washington after tanker seizures by Iran. The deployment adds to a growing US military buildup in tense Gulf waterways vital to the global oil trade. Now, of course, now we look at it from Tehran's side. Hitting out, Tehran accused Washington of inflaming regional instability. The US military says that Iran has either seized or attempted to take control of nearly 20 inter-nation ally flagged ships in the region over the past 2 years. We're talking about 2 years and 20 ships that they're talking about. The US sailors and Marines entered the Red Sea after transiting through the Suez Canal. They arrived on board the USS Bataan and USS Carter Hall warships. The USS Bataan is an amphibious assault ship which can carry fixed wing and rotary aircraft as well as landing craft. The USS Carter Hall, on the other hand, is a dock landing ship, transports Marines, their gear, and lands them ashore. Now, the latest deployment comes after Washington said its forces blocked 2 attempts by Iran to seize commercial tankers in international waters of Oman on the 5th of July. The maritime services in Iran said one of the 2 tankers, the Bahamian flagged Richmond Voyager, had collided with an Iranian vessel, seriously injuring 5 crew members. In April and early May, Iran seized 2 oil tankers within a week in regional waters. Now, those incidents came after Israel and the United States blamed Iran in November for what they said was a drone strike against a tanker operated by an Israeli-owned firm off the coast of Oman. Now, this is the region that we're talking about. From the US side, US announced last month that F-35 and F-16 would deter Iran from seizing ships in the Gulf.
Shalom, Ka'ala Yahweh Bashim Yahshai, Ba'ashem Rakav double honors my teachers, the apostles and elders of the great millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect, who are the house of David reborn again in this generation. And Shalom to the 130 Yasharallah, who today are known as the Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, who before losing our true heritage, we were known as, and still are, the true Hebrew Israelites of the Holy Bible. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about the ratcheting up of World War III, right, with the video we just watched on the thousands of US troops that have just arrived in the Red Sea amid ratcheting Iran tensions. But before we get into this article, let's read this. This is Revelations 11 and 14. The second woe is past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly. So John the Revelator, who saw a vision of World War III plus World War I and II, this is what he had described, right? That he's seen that World War II had just passed, and that the Third World War, which is what we're going to see happen, right? Which is where you have Iran, Russia, and China, along with all the other BRICS nations and even allies of America, basically launch nuclear missiles and basically create a nuclear annihilation of America and the NATO forces, right? This is what the Lake of Fire is, that's described in the book of Revelations, right? This is World War III that's going to happen. The Bible tells us that the Lord is going to gather up all the armies of the world into the Valley of Jehoshaphat, and the Valley of Jehoshaphat is right there in the land of Israel for the most part, right? And right now, this right here, where you're seeing all these U.S. forces arriving there in the Middle East, this is just the beginning, because again, I think there's like 10,000 other soldiers over there, but in Poland, along with all the other military. You see, the reason why Biden is sending all this weaponry over to Ukraine, it's not so that way Ukraine can have it, right? It's so that way they can use it, or some of it at least, but really it's so that way they can put the equipment on the European continent, right? Which will make it a lot easier to get it down into the Valley of Jehoshaphat area. Well, let's go and read this article so we get a bit more details than what was described in that video. It says, more than 3,000 U.S. military personnel have arrived in the Red Sea on board 2 warships, part of a beefed up response from the United States after alleged seizures of several civilian ships by Iran, the U.S. Navy said. So you see, what's happened is over this last year, since Saudi Arabia and Iran have for the most part made up, Iran has become a lot more bold in their presence and their actions, and they've actually been seizing, besides when it says here civilian ships, what they're talking about is oil ships, right? The oil ships are coming out from right between the let me show you real quick. Right here in Google Maps, right? See, they just arrived here, right, in the Red Sea, and basically there's a U.S. base here in Djibouti, and where these ships are being seized at is right here in the Persian Gulf, namely in this little area here, where the in this little like peninsula area, right by Dubai. And why is that? Well, that's because Iran is right here, right? And these ships, like I said, are basically being confiscated. And again, they're mainly oil ships that are being stopped from going to Europe. Because again, why? Well, because Iran is stopping the commerce to Europe, right? Because again, they are part of they are, for the most part, allied with the BRICS nations. Okay, so this is basically the economic war that's going on. And as the apostles say, economic wars lead to real, kinetic wars, which is basically real, wars. Okay. Now that being said, let's go and read this, because all these U.S. military forces being arriving here in Saudi Arabia, in the Arabia Peninsula, that also is a prophecy from the Old Testament. Right? This is it here. It says, this is Joel 2:20. But I will remove far off from you the northern army. Right? That's the American military forces. I will drive him into a land barren and desolate, with his face towards the east sea, and his hinder parts towards the utmost sea. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things. And now right there is talking about Saudi Arabia, right? The East Sea and the utmost sea. Okay, so basically, what we're going to see is that the U.S. military is going to, for the most part, be quartered off here. And when you look at all the things that have been going on in Saudi Arabia and their fallout with America, because of Biden's lack of political prowess, right? Saudi Arabia, for the most part, now is starting to stand up, as the scriptures say that Ishmael shall remember himself, and that's what's happening now, right? The Prince Salman of Saudi Arabia, who is for the most part the de facto ruler. He's like 34 years old, and he's basically ruling Saudi Arabia for his dad, who's for the most part an absentee king. Right? He's basically retired and letting his son run things. Well, his son has, for the most part, stopped the war in Syria. Right? He's basically made friends between Iran and Syria, who were, enemies, and he's basically stopped a lot of the turmoil going on in the Middle East, the turmoil which America thrived on from it existing. Well, besides that, they've also made friends with China and Russia, and they've pretty much shunned America. They basically rejected Biden's attempts, with oil assistance. They've started to sell their oil for other than dollars, which was a big part in making the dollar actually worth something, right? Hence why the dollar was called the petrodollar. Well, now you can buy oil in yuan and rubles, pretty much almost anything now, I believe. And the thing is that right there has now basically made Saudi Arabia become a hostile state in the eyes of America. In fact, we're starting to see an uptake in news articles coming out saying that Saudi Arabia is a dictator-like ship, or basically ill stories about Saudi Arabia. Not saying that it's a dictatorship, but that it doesn't treat its citizens fair, that they have a slave economy for the most part. Because again, in Saudi Arabia, a lot of Indians and a lot of Africans go here, and they're basically servants in Saudi Arabia. But again, that's besides the point. The whole point is that the ships arriving in the Red Sea is all prophecy that was foretold, over 1,000 years ago, right? Because Joel takes place over 1,000 years ago. That this is what would happen when there would be a third world war in the world. Let's continue reading. It says, the U.S. sailors and Marines entered the Red Sea on Sunday after transiting through the Suez Canal in a pre-announced deployment, the U.S. Fifth Fleet said in a statement on Monday. It says, the deployment adds to the growing U.S. military buildup in tense Gulf waterways. You see that? So there's already a U.S. buildup. So this isn't the first ships there, right? Remember, besides the ships going here, there's also more U.S. military ships here in the Black Sea. Well, it's only a short trip for them to come down to the land of Israel and even down over here. So you see, the most part, the Lord is bringing all the military into this area, into the Valley of Jehoshaphat, and this is what we're seeing right now, Akim. It says, Gulf waterways vital to the global oil trade, and led Tehran on Monday to accuse Washington of inflaming regional instability. The U.S. military says Iran has either seized or attempted to take control of nearly 20 internationally flagged ships in the region over the past 2 years. They arrived on board the USS Bataan and the USS Carter Hall warships, providing greater flexibility and maritime capability to the Fifth Fleet. The statement from the Bahrain-based command added, the development adds to efforts to deter destabilizing activity and de-escalate regional tensions caused by Iran's harassment and seizure of merchant vessels. Fifth Fleet spokesperson Commander Tom Hawkins told the AFP news agency. Now, another thing too is that this right here is part of America's power, right? Because the world uses the US dollar as the reserve currency, the American military also provides security upon the high seas. This is just part of commerce with America using the US dollar. This comes with it, right? The security that your ships will be free from pirating, from seizures and all that stuff. But again, Iran doesn't use the dollar, so hence they have no dog in the race, I guess you could say, right? So that's another aspect to consider. It says the USS Bataan is an amphibious assault ship that can carry fixed wing and rotary aircraft, as well as landing craft. The USS Carter Hall, a docked landing ship, transports Marines and their gear and lands them ashore. In a Monday press conference, Iran's foreign ministry spokesman Nassar Kanani said the U.S. developments are only serving Washington's interest. The U.S. government's military's presence in the region has never created security. Their interest in the region have always compelled them to fuel instability and insecurity, he told reporters. We are deeply convinced that the countries of the Persian Gulf are capable of ensuring their own security. For the most part, Iran's telling America to get out, that they don't need them there. It says the latest development comes from Washington after Washington said its forces blocked 2 attempts by Iran to seize commercial tankers in international waters off Oman on July 5th. The maritime services in Iran said one of the 2 tankers and Bahamian flagged Richard Voyer had collided with an Iranian vessel, seriously injuring 5 crew members, according to the state news agency IRNA. In April and early May, Iran seized 2 oil tankers within a week of regional waters. And that's for the most part it, Akim. I'm just going to tell you how there's a lot of instability going on in that area, which is causing America and Edom to basically start to panic and start to need to flex their muscle in this area. But again, it's all part of the Lord's plan to bring this forward, right? Because why? Well, because again, all these prophecies must come to pass. And as we all know, what's going to happen is that there's 2 major prophecies left, right? That's the mark of the beast becoming mandatory, and World War III breaking out. Okay, so just wanted to share this news with you, Akim. I know a lot of brothers have also shared this, but I thought I'd go into a little bit more details. So hopefully this video was edifying. Akim, until next time, I want to give all honor and glory and praises to Yahweh, Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Dash. Double honors to my teachers, the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Peace and mercy to the elect. Shalom.